My name is Abel Carriel. We're here in Brooklyn, New York, in Canarsie with my man Jason Matthews.
What's going on? What's going on?
And we're talking about a house hack burst strategy deal that was recently completed. We're gonna talk about all of the things that came about during the renovation process, the good, the bad, the ugly, what this property is worth today compared to what was paid for and what was put into it. And on a separate video, we're actually gonna interview the clients to get their perspective. Right now we're standing in this fully renovated two-family property in Canarsie, Brooklyn with an additional dwelling unit, but it didn't start that way. What did this property look like from day one? What was the appeal to it?
The main appeal was it was brick exterior, fully detached. It had a shared driveway, but it had some backyard space. The details are really also the outside entrances. There are several that went to the basement, and the fact that the basement ran the whole length of this 2,900 square foot building. And the building being 2,900 square feet in itself, it's massive, right? Once we looked at the price, and as you know, the price per square footage was around what?
About $275 per square foot. Compare that to the other properties we're seeing in the same exact area. We're looking at $365, $430 per square foot. So this was a steal.
Yeah, there was some level of distress for the property to have sold for that price per square footage in a market where you're seeing those other numbers as the standard. So all the numbers together just made it such an appealing property, and the additional underutilized space to maximize income. The buyers just had the vision and then they ran with it.
And you say vision, I don't think everybody has a vision when they step into a property like this.
Yeah.
What are some things that you saw on this property that most people would look at and go, this isn't for me?
Yeah, definitely the upstairs unit. Cosmetically, it just looked like a hurricane just ran through it. Like everything was outdated, the cabinet shelving was just falling apart. The bathroom just needed to be gone, redone again. So from a cosmetic standpoint, if you don't have that vision and you saw that, could be something that seems daunting, just way over someone's head, whereas someone that had the vision and really wanted to go through a value-add motion would see the upside, especially with a house of this size, and how much rental opportunity could come from being able to utilize that space.
Now we're talking about cosmetics, things that would scare a lot of people, just seeing cabinetry that looks like it's falling down and the place looking like a hurricane ran through it. Is there anything with regards to the layout that you guys had a really good vision for and had a good plan for when you initially saw this?
Yeah, great question. Throughout the building, there was just a lot of underutilized space because the current owners, they were just a family. They weren't really in the investment space, so it wasn't something that they were trying to maximize numbers on. It was just like carried through generations, and it was just sitting here. So definitely the basement. This entire length of this property is the basement. So the width, the tall ceilings, and even when we walked into the front half of the basement, because there's two halves, it's separated already. When you walk through the front half, there was just this massive oversized one bedroom that easily could be two bedrooms with their own separate closet. It was just a gold mine because you just renovate it, you're able to maximize, and on top of that, add an additional bedroom in there, which you know is gonna give you an additional, what, $300 to $400?
Yeah, minimum. I think we're looking at about $300 to $400 a month. Yeah, additional rental income just from adding that bedroom. In New York, a lot of people have these lower level additional dwelling units. What some people don't know is that you can actually utilize the city program to occupy those spaces and to get tenants, not just any tenants, but you're getting tenants with guaranteed rent coming from the government, and a lot of times this is above market value. So how did they strategize to utilize that lower level? What are they looking to do as far as occupying it?
Yeah. Usually a basement is below street level, whereas this basement is above street level. Like none of this actual building is below the street like a typical basement would be. The fact that there were already so many points of egress, the fact that the size of the window was someone, a human could enter and exit that window, it made it more plausible for this to be a legal dwelling unit that could be occupied by a family. And it was already set up with a kitchen, bathroom, everything. There was a family living there. So I think in this unique situation, it was just grandfathered in.
And that's a huge takeaway, because we had another client from Bigger Pockets on the same street in Canarsie, and what he did was he converted the living room space to an additional bedroom, and that passed Section 8's inspection.
Oh wow.
So that added instantly to his rental income, and I think it's a strategy that is underutilized in this market. That's awesome. Any challenges that came about during the renovation phase?
Absolutely. Obviously, there were some unexpected hurdles that came about. Inspectors can't break walls. There's certain things they're just not allowed to legally do. When the contractor actually started doing work, there were some unexpected things. No subflooring in the actual basement. So if you just stepped in the wrong space one day, your foot could actually go through the floor.
boy.
Yeah, so they ripped the entire floor up and they had to put the subflooring down and then put a new floor on top of that.
What about upstairs? Anything happen?
Yeah, the roof was burnt. There was just fire on all the beams going across the roof. So there was a past fire that was not recorded on any title report. And obviously an inspector can't break the walls and see that. And it seemed as though maybe the owners maybe knew about it, or there was a previous owner that knew about it, and maybe they just painted the walls over. We can't assume anything that was intentional, but there was definitely a fire. The contractor did look out for the owners and really just made sure that they increased the longevity of the roof's lifespan to minimize that cost of just completely doing over the roof and focus on the weak beams so that they can just either sister them or completely replace them.
Nice. So they got strategic in how they handled that renovation so that they didn't overspend on it unnecessarily. That's huge. I mean, having that part of your team, a good contractor who's going to work with you and look out for you, is going to save you a ton of money.
Don't get it wrong. The dude definitely went over his timeline, right? And they still did go over budget. That's definitely something that I know was one thing that they wish they went into this project 203K construction loan route, so that they could have that third-party vendor in between them and the contractor, because of just negotiating and not having the experience negotiating with contractors and the costs that are associated with going over budget, especially when you're taking on that mortgage and you start to have to take those payments.
That's an interesting point you bring up, because I think whenever we're talking about these renovation style loans, what we're mainly thinking about is the benefit to financing these construction costs instead of coming out of pocket. But what we don't think about is the leverage that the bank allows us to have, because they're that intermediary, they're negotiating, and they're also making sure that everything's going on schedule. The contractors are paid out on a schedule for hitting certain checkpoints throughout the project. And when you're paying cash, it's really up to you to negotiate that, to have a contract, or to pay for somebody to have a contract drawn out for that. So that's a really good point when it comes to utilizing that. So it seems like if they came across a similar property in the future, they would probably lean towards using that kind of product.
Yeah, it seemed like the choice that they wanted to take after this first experience. They were grateful they were able to team up with a recommended agent that has experience with programs. I'm not going to be the jack of all trades. I know what my focus point is. I'm able to find those house hack properties. I'm able to run the numbers. I'm able to negotiate on the price. I'm able to look at the market comps in this area and see exactly what's a steal and what's not a steal. And what's interesting is, when you're looking on your own, you can just see a number that a property is asking for, and you can say, oh, that's too expensive, right? I need the deal, I need the deal, I need the deal. But then you forget or neglect to look at the actual size of the property. And so when people don't factor in price per square foot, you could be looking at a steal, and because you're just looking at the asking price, you're not taking that next step to know that you should pounce on this before the next person does.
So now that this project is completely done, what is the after repair value in your estimation?
1.25 minimum. It would fly. The whole house is renovated.
You didn't hesitate for 1 second. This thing goes back on the market for 1.25 and you'll have buyers lined up for it.
It's almost 3,000 square foot property.
We're talking almost $500,000 in equity that was built into this property. How much was spent on the actual renovation?
Give or take, definitely around that $200,000 mark. But the area in itself, there's so much growth, there's so much demand for this area. These properties are going up in value. There's Sears that was around the Flatbush area specifically that got shut down. That's going to be a 600 plus unit new development, a luxury rental unit building that's going to be going up there, which is also going to have a ripple effect on the surrounding neighborhood. So as you're seeing all these developers entering this space and really starting to build out these more higher end apartment buildings, that's just going to benefit and have people want to move to this area, which in turn is going to increase the rental amount, which in turn is going to increase the property value.
When you say luxury apartments and you say 600 units, I'm thinking amenities, right? A gym, pool, storage, things like that. But I'm also thinking about the size of the unit. So we have a 3,000 square foot property here, 3 levels, average of about 1,000 square feet per unit. These luxury rentals are going to be probably around the 600 square foot range, right?
If not smaller.
If not smaller. So my question to you is that something that homeowners in this area should be fearful of, or should they be happy that a luxury building is coming up? How does that affect the potential rental income for a building like this?
Look at the general pattern of real estate, right? When property values started to go up in Manhattan, people started to move to Williamsburg. When Williamsburg prices started to go up, people started to move to Prospect Park area. When those prices started to go up, they started to push further and further and further and further away. Every expansion, prices go up, and then there's another layer of expansion that happens. The competition is great. You want to welcome that competition, because the competition is going to drive the traffic, it's going to drive the demand that's going to want to be around the new area. Eventually, that is the trend as what you see here happening with the development that's going to happen and benefit this neighborhood greatly.
What would be the next step for a house hack burst strategy investor like the clients that purchased this property? What would be the next move? Let's say they're picking up and they're moving on to their next project. Anything in particular that they can do with this space to maximize the rental income?
Yeah, it's still underutilized, especially for their personal unit. The living room, dining room space itself is at least 1,000 square feet. They can at least add some additional bedrooms in this space, at least 2 just from this space, and still have living room space for a small TV, couch, coffee table. But at the end of the day, people need places to live, especially here in New York, where there is kind of a shortage with apartments. There are lots of families looking for larger apartments as well. This would make a ideal 4-bedroom apartment. Once they move out here, people are looking to rent apartments, not buy the house. They can at least potentially break even on their mortgage the first year after they move out, or slightly cash flow. It's a huge equity building market we're currently in. They bought something for $800, they did their actual renovations and got the forced equity up to 1.25. If not worth 1.3, conservatively speaking, no questions about it, 1.25.
And we're looking at gross rental income conservatively about $8,000 a month from this entire building once they move out.
Right, almost 100K a year.
We talked about the fire damage on the second floor, and we also talked about cosmetic work that needed to be done. What came up in the basement? I know you were talking about something that made it uninhabitable.
Yeah, what happened in the basement, a family member was supposedly a pseudo contractor or something. You know, you got that one family member that said they could do it all.
Yeah.
They did something wrong. What was happening, there was just too much pressure going through the pipe from the boiler, and you just feel the immense heat. And especially during the summertime, it would get really hot, almost unbearably hot. The pressure was just too much. And then when they actually started doing the renovations and they had an electrician walk through there, and they realized that the current amperage that was coming into the property would just not be enough to support all the lighting and the split units on top of that. They ended up having to completely rewire, put new breaker units and upgrade all of the electrical throughout the entire building, which can get very expensive. Like the 3 main things when it comes to anything behind the walls, always gonna be plumbing, electrical, anything that has to do with heating your utilities and the roof. Sometimes you can go into a pretty property with the oldest plumbing, you look at the flooring and they're slanted at 30-degree angles. That's now structural. Going into electrical, you're going into plumbing, and those are like my main big ticket items that anytime I'm walking through the property, I'm always checking for, just because I know that those can get a lot more costly than cosmetic work any day of the week.
So we talked about identifying a deal like this by looking at price per square footage. People get scared away by the price of a property, and they're not looking at the future potential.
Or the actual size of the property itself.
Which is huge, right? Because that's what led to being able to break up some of the spaces, increase the value not only of individual units, but increase the value of the property altogether.
And also seeing past cosmetic work is less scarier than anything hidden behind the wall.
And the other cool thing about this type of house hack strategy is that you can leverage on a whole other level. It's not only leveraging your experience when it comes to the acquisition, the property management, but even when it comes to handling the construction costs. If you are interested in this kind of deal, you should seriously consider a construction loan like a 203K loan or a home style loan, where you can now leverage the bank, have them do some of the dirty work for you, so you can focus on the next deal and the next steps.
Because the last thing you want to do is go over budget, then you're going over your time frame. Now your mortgage payments start to hit in, and now this person is not able to deliver on what they initially agreed upon because you didn't have any kind of experience with negotiating with the contractor before. Whereas if that was already established with the bank, that's not something that would cost you your time and money in the long run.
So tune into our interview with the homeowners of this property so we can talk a little bit more and you guys can hear a little bit more about their story. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe so that you get notifications for future videos.